Ukraine's death toll mounts this week after Russia's invasion last week Thursday, and concerns grow about nuclear threats. 62 Shia Muslims killed during Friday's prayers in Peshawar, Pakistan, when a suicide bomber attacked a Shia mosque. Israeli officials attacked deaf Palestinian children and spray skunk water to disperse crowds. The Ukraine crisis exposes racism along Ukraine's borders as well as here at home. And in local news, a teacher is suspended in Virginia after making remarks in support of Russia's president. Bringing you the latest headlines, I'm Fatima, and you're watching TMJ's newscast. Ukraine's civilian death toll mounts to 331 deaths that have been verified, among them 19 being children, and 675 injured, as reported by the United Nations Human Rights Office, though Ukrainian officials say the number is much higher and difficult to calculate. According to the Human Rights Office, most of the victims were killed by explosive weapons such as shelling from heavy artillery, multi-rocket systems, and airstrikes. This report comes after concerns grow over nuclear threats when a building near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine was hit on Friday, March 4th, injuring 2 security staff members, but no nuclear radioactive material was released. International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Grossi appealed to both sides to not clash near the site, as he said the situation is very fragile. The death toll in Peshawar, Pakistan has risen to 62, including 7 children below the age of 10, and 189 who were wounded in a Shia mosque when a suicide bomber detonated a powerful explosive device. The bomber strapped the explosives to his body during Friday prayers after shooting at policemen outside the mosque, killing one and injuring the other. The congregation consisted of about 150 people at the Friday prayers. Ambulance sirens blared through the city as loved ones rushed to the hospitals, panicking, grieving, and inquiring about their family members, many of whom are in the intensive care unit. ISIS has claimed this devastating attack, and it is reported that the attacker was from Afghanistan. It is said that the 3 suspects are also connected to the attack, which the police are working on identifying. Shia Muslims have been prime targets of terrorist groups like ISIS, with attacks happening frequently just in the past few months. Peshawar's Shia specifically have seen a lot of violence and oppression, including school attacks, like the one in December of 2014, killing 142 people, including 132 children, followed by an attack on February 2015 when 19 people were killed in a Shia mosque. Journalist Taha Siddiqui says that local media is silent about the religious identity of the victims and blames anti-Shia policies of the Pakistani army for what he calls a slow Shia genocide. Pakistan's Prime Minister promised that those who were behind the attack will be brought to justice. An 11-year-old girl, Manwar Burkan, with special needs, was rushed to the hospital with a broken jaw after being attacked by Israeli soldiers with a stun grenade. Dozens of Palestinians were attacked on Sunday, February 27th, when Israeli forces used violence to disperse crowds that had gathered to mark Isra and Meraj, which is the ascension of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Videos show how skunk water is being sprayed at civilians, including women and children, who try running away in terror. Skunk water, created by these forces and bought by many police departments here in the U.S., is spoken about as harmless, non-toxic, and effective for handling protesters. However, Palestinians who have actually experienced it have described it as the smell of sewage mixed with rotten corpses. They say that it is a concoction of chemicals that causes intense nausea, obstructs breathing, causes violent gagging, vomiting, skin irritation, eye and abdominal pain. When fired in large doses, especially from water cannons, it can have a lethal effect. According to the Palestinian Red Crescent, 25 Palestinians were injured during this incident, and 20 were arrested by occupational forces. Ukraine's ongoing crisis exposes racism along Ukraine's border, as well as in media here at home. As droves of people flee Ukraine's western border, videos show government officials segregating people by race, giving Ukrainians preference to pass through the border and leaving Black people from African nations stranded at Ukrainian train stations. Groups of Africans and Indians being menaced with guns in vans and beaten at the Polish border. The UN's High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has said that 1 million people from Ukraine have fled across the borders to neighboring countries. But this isn't the only instance when racism has reared its ugly head. Since the 24/7 coverage of the Ukraine crisis, the dominant media handling of the narrative has been met with controversy, given the distinction between this set of refugees and those fleeing war in the Middle East and Asia. NBC News correspondent Kelly Kobe is seen on air saying, "These are not refugees from Syria. They are from Ukraine. They're Christian, they're white, they're very similar." CBS News correspondent is heard saying that people of Ukraine are civilized, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan.
But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
People from around the world took to social media using the hashtag uncivilized to show pictures of themselves, their families, their achievements, and the rich history of their homelands. He later apologized. Ukraine's former deputy general prosecutor spoke to the BBC, suggesting that it was harder for him to watch white people fleeing conflict.
It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed.
Journalist Daniel Hanan wrote in The Telegraph, "Ukraine is a European country. Its people watch Netflix and have Instagram accounts, vote in free elections, and read uncensored newspapers. War is no longer something visited upon impoverished and remote populations. It can happen to anyone." Speaking of uncensored newspapers, a Virginia public school has suspended a substitute teacher for making remarks during instructional hours. He made remarks about the Russian-Ukraine crisis. John Stanton, the teacher, says he told students about the situation and what is happening from both sides. And then he expressed support for Putin by saying, "I support the logic of Putin." He says he meant that Putin made a rational decision from his perspective. In other local news, websites like RT.com have been down or are being banned here in the United States, becoming difficult to obtain information from the other side when you're trying to get access to more information. RT America has also laid off most of its staff and said that it would be ceasing production, likely to be a permanent decision due to the ongoing crisis after DirecTV said it would no longer host the production company on its platform. The National Association of Broadcasters has also urged broadcasters to not carry any Russian-sponsored programming after the conflict. In light of the Russian-Ukraine crisis, many in the West have actually come together to express their overwhelming support of the Ukrainian people, with over 40 million in private donations already collected by the United Nations Refugee Agency, along with many other charities and fundraisers. Cryptocurrency has also emerged as a leading form of aid, like the company FTX that gave $25 to each Ukrainian. Elliptic, a crypto transaction tracking company, said $56.2 million in aid was given to the Ukraine's government and to military training and weapons programs in Ukraine. Fashion is also rallying together to express their support for Ukraine, like the brand Balenciaga, H&M, and Nanushka, by either donating profits, raising funds, or halting sales in Russia. All this showing that the people, brands, and organizations can come together for causes that we usually hear are way too complicated or too political to support, especially when it comes to the bombing and injustice of innocent people.